Hi everybody, it's Lisa Large from Thrive Canine Service Team here. I wanted to talk to you today about BAT. What's BAT? BAT stands for Behavior Adjustment Training, and this is a protocol that was created by world-renowned trainer Grisha Stewart. The purpose of this protocol is to help our dogs who are labeled reactive. Now, these guys typically are suffering from frustration, fear, hyperarousal, and when they see a very specific stimuli like a dog or people, they tend to get highly reactive. Now, oftentimes in training, what we lean towards is our tools. So when I say tools, I don't necessarily mean like a physical tool like a leash or a collar, although those are used quite often, too often. But we also lean towards our verbal cues, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, your looks, touch, come, leave it, all those wonderful things. Those are very useful cues to use in certain situations. However, when we really dive into the behavior and we look at it and we go, okay, well, if I have to tell my dog to leave it every time they see a person or they see a dog across the street, and they choose to leave it because I ask them to and I give them a little treat and we carry on, that's all well and good. But I can still see the aftermath of the stress and the frustration that short little, not even really an interaction, caused for my dog. So I'm not really addressing the problem. I'm just sort of band-aiding it, if you will. And sometimes band-aids are required. But what I really want to do is I want to get to the root of the problem. And I want to start addressing what's actually happening here. And what's happening here is the dog's inability to regulate themselves during these social interactions. Now, this could look like just hyperactivity, super excited to the point that they're getting frustrated and they're pulling and grabbing at the leash, or it could actually look rather aggressive in the behavior and that the dog is growling, pulling. Looks kind of scary, right? Regardless of what the underlying emotion is, my dog is struggling from some form of stress, whether it's eustress, which is the excitable stress, or distress, which is the not so good stress. It's still taking a rather large toll on my dog's ability to problem solve their way through this issue. Think of it like this. Even if I'm really excited, underlying emotion is great, and I come running to you to give you a big old hug to say hello, you might not find that appropriate. In fact, you might find that to be very uncomfortable because I'm not listening to your social cues and I'm just sort of thrusting myself into your personal space. That's how some other dogs might feel. That in turn can cause this dangerous sort of situation to arise where the other dog says, hey, no, I didn't like that, and they start getting into a bit of an altercation. We want to avoid that, obviously. We want our dogs to be able to approach or choose to just ignore if it's something that they don't want to engage with. So this is why BAT's so wonderful. It is not a protocol that requires any special equipment other than a leash, a collar, a harness, but what we're looking for is something that doesn't give corrections. Let me say that again. It does not give corrections. Why can't you give corrections? Because the dog has to choose to disengage from whatever the stimulus is that's present in their environment. Okay? If you have to call them away, then they're not actually making that choice on their own, which means they're not regulating themselves. They're just simply listening to you. You almost become a crutch. You have to be there in order for this dog to be successful. Obviously, you are always going to be with your dog, but the point is we want them to have the wherewithal to be able to choose to walk away on their own. The setup is the most important because environment plays such a huge role in behavior. So when you are choosing the location that you're going to work in, pick it ahead of time. Drive out to the place, go at different times, try to figure out when would be the best time to take my dog here. The idea is that we want to expose the dog, but not to the point that they are what we call over threshold. Over threshold essentially means that your dog is incapable of problem solving their way through this because the stress, the arousal, the fear, the frustration, whatever it is that they are feeling is too great at that time. So keep in mind, when stress goes up, so when cortisol increases, cognitive function actually decreases. So your job when you're doing that is to make sure that your dog maintains a calm state of mind so that they can take in the information that's being given to them, they can assess it appropriately, and respond in a more healthy, more appropriate, comfortable manner for everybody involved. Okay, so you've chosen the area that you'd like to go to. Ideally, we're looking at a green space, and a big outdoor space like a beach, something like that. And you're looking for a lot of texture. And you need this texture because you want your dog to be more interested in having their nose down to the ground, sniffing and investigating the environment than keeping their head up and scanning the environment for trouble and seeing what else is around them. So bushes, trees, pathways, benches, rocks, these things are all really interesting to a dog, and that gives them the opportunity to put their attention into that. When the sniffer is working, they're less likely to become reactive, and that's actually a fact that we do know. I could get into all of the science behind it, but I won't make this video go on forever. Be happy to talk to you about that a little bit more in another time. So you've chosen your area. Now you need to decide, where am I going to park my car? That's important, because what you don't want to have happen is you park your car in a location that you cannot access because now too many people or dogs have come to the environment. Place your car in a spot where you could potentially get to it from different angles. So, for example, say somebody comes to the environment and they enter in with a group of dogs. Maybe it's a dog walker and you can't get back this way. You should be able to come all the way around and approach your car at another angle. That way you can get yourself out of there. These training sessions are not meant to be long. You do not need to spend the entire day doing this. You're looking for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops of exposure, okay? So what that means is the dog's not staring at the other stimulus for an entire 20 to 30 minutes, but they have access to seeing it within that 20 and 30 minutes. We want the dog to choose to maintain a certain distance. So if you know that at 50 feet your dog can see another dog without becoming reactive, then you're going to work at 50 feet. But if at 45 feet your dog becomes reactive, that's far too close. Now, you don't want to work at 80 feet away though. That's too far. What you're looking for is to sort of surf on that behavioral threshold, wherever that imaginary line is, where your dog is aware that the stimulus is there but not upset about it. Your dog is allowed to look at the stimulus. In fact, we encourage that. Don't need to be told to look away unless they start to fixate or stare, in which case then you are too close. Dog is allowed to look. Take a deep breath while this is happening, because you are probably going to be feeling a little bit of stress, and that is okay. But if you have your distance in place and you've got your dog on a leash, you're safe. Take a deep breath. Watch your dog's body language. You're looking for signs of increased stress, increased arousal, or frustration, or fear. If none of those things are happening and the dog is simply looking, let them look. As soon as they choose to go, not interesting anymore, and they turn their head away, maybe they sniff the ground, maybe they look to you, maybe they just go to move on, you're going to very gently mark that with a yes, good job, and you're going to give some nice verbal praise and carry on your way. You don't need to start doling out treats for this. We don't want this to become something that requires a food reinforcer, because the environment itself, the walk, and the ability for the dog to choose the safety of creating space is in fact the reward that we're working for here. So you can have treats on you for emergency situations, of course, or say your dog disengages from something that was very difficult, something quickly comes around the corner and enters your environment, then yes, of course, you could give them a food reinforcer just to say, yes, this was absolutely amazing. Think of it like a jackpot, but it's certainly not a requirement. The only other reason why I might carry treats for this sort of training is if the environment gets a little bit stale. When my dog's not looking, I might toss some of those treats down on the ground just to sort of bait the environment and get their focus back to checking out the environment. Now, Grisha Stewart recommends that you do this on a long line, so a 15-foot leash. Do not use a flexi leash for this. because a flexi leash is always going to have tension on it. They're a little bit more on the dangerous side. They have that big chunky handle that you have to hold on to. Even if you do lock it, in order to reel the dog in, you're like clicking to catch them. So we don't want to do that. Just a regular long lead. I use a back clip harness with my dog when I was doing this training with him. And there was absolutely no corrections happening there, so it was perfect. Now, how to decide whether or not you can get closer to the stimulus. Keep in mind, this is not going to happen over one training session, one day. This could be weeks, could be days, could be months. Really depends on the dog and how they're feeling about the training. It also depends on their sociability. Do they actually want to meet people or dogs? Or would they rather just ignore and carry on their way? I'm never going to force them to meet any dogs or people. The only way I'm going to allow the dogs to interact with each other is if I see affiliative body language. So body wiggles, tails wagging, soft muscles. They can gently pant, but I'm not going to allow it to happen if there's an increase in emotional arousal or stress or fear or frustration, because that is a dangerous cocktail that I don't want my dog to drink. So for that reason, we are going to keep a very close eye on the body language, and that's going to decipher how close we can get to the stimulus. I'm also watching the other dog too, if we're using dogs in this case, to see how are they reacting as well. Not every dog is going to be friendly, and I don't want my dog who is struggling to go up and meet a dog that is going to be reactive or demonstrate aggression towards them, because that's not going to help. Now, as I do decrease that distance, I'm going to use a zigzag pattern like this. I'm not going to allow my dog to walk straight on. That's actually likely to increase the arousal or the stress further. So we're going to avoid that. We're going to do a zigzag, and they're sniffing this whole time as we get closer and closer to the stimulus. Again, this could take a certain amount of time. When you're choosing your environment, obviously we don't want to work in an area where there's off-leash dogs. Maybe you're working in a big field at a distance from a fenced-in off-leash park, but you're not going into that off-leash park. The other option is to ask a friend or family member who has a dog to work at a distance with you. When I'm doing this with my clients, I typically have a secondary handler. If I don't have a secondary handler, then I've already done a lot of the groundwork training with my clients, so we can just talk to each other via Bluetooth. And I can tell them, oh, I need you to increase your space. Your dog is getting uncomfortable. And I can control the stimulus dog that I'm working with. But if I have a secondary handler, that's even more ideal, because they would be handling the dog, and I can say over the phone, okay, you need to back up. My dog's getting too upset here. And then I can control the environment in a better way, which is great. Grisha Stewart also recommends for the equipment that you use a carabiner and a rappel ring. So I'm going to include some links to some of her videos. I don't need to reinvent the wheel because she's done such a phenomenal job with this program. So I'm not going to make you new videos on that, but I'm going to give you the links to the videos that she's created so you can hear her talk about it, because she's amazing. Take your time. Take a deep breath. This is not just the experience that your dog is having. This is the experience that you've been having as well. I understand that when you go out for a walk, your heart rate goes up a little bit, because you're like, oh gosh, I hope we don't pass anyone, or we don't pass any kids, or we don't pass any dogs. And that is very stressful on you. So the idea here is that both you and your dog are not stressed out at all, because you've created the environment that is setting both of you up to be the most successful as you possibly can be. When your dog is given the autonomy to make choices about themselves, and then the agency in their environment, that's where safety and security comes in. You can create a beautiful, safe environment for your dog, but if they do not feel secure, then that safety doesn't really matter. So this is what we're looking for when we're doing behavior adjustment training. It's extremely effective. Yes, it does take a little bit of work. And yes, it's okay to say, well, while I'm doing this, I'm just not going to walk my dog in the neighborhood anymore, because that sort of environment is where he seems to be, or she seems to be, the most unsuccessful. Well, so why are we doing it? Don't walk them in areas where they're going to be unsuccessful while they're doing this. You can supplement their exercise with other activities, play in the yard, a run, a bike ride, going to a sniff spot. You can give them other forms of enrichment. There's lots of different ways that you can do this. And it doesn't mean you're never going to walk your dog in the street again. It just means right now, while they're learning to regulate themselves more appropriately, you're setting them up to be successful. And you're not triggering them further as they're going through this. One other thing that I'm going to include is Grisha Stewart's shoreline graphic. It shows you how close a dog can get to a stimulus, because sometimes we do need to interject, and that's just because the dog's not being successful or we just got too close too quickly. I don't want you to have to do cartwheels to get your dog's attention, so you're going to teach them some disengagement cues like a mouth click or touch or pop, 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 or come. Things like that to pull your dog's focus away. But what you are not going to do is yank on that leash. Absolutely not, because that's just going to cause more stress. These links are also going to include some leash handling skills, some really great ways to essentially reel your dog in without putting any tension on the leash. So I encourage you to check these things out. It won't take up a lot of your time, but it will absolutely change your world when it comes with dealing with a dog that is struggling with reactivity on their walks. If you have any questions about behavior adjustment training, I can talk about it for hours. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can get me at info@thrivecanineserviceteam.ca or on my website, www.thrivecanineserviceteam.ca. Luck in your training with your dog. Take care.